Thank you. We are gathered in the cause of liberty. That's why we're here. This is a unique moment. The great democracies face new and serious threats, yet seem to be losing confidence in their own calling and competence. Economic, political, and national security challenges proliferate, and they're made worse by the tendency to turn inward. The health of the democratic spirit itself is at issue, and the renewal of that spirit is the urgent task at hand. Since World War II, America has encouraged and benefited from the global advance of free markets, from the strength of democratic alliances, and from the advance of free societies. At one level, this has been a raw calculation of interest. The 20th century features some of the worst horrors of history because dictators committed them. Free nations are less likely to threaten and fight each other. And free trade helped make America into a global economic power. For more than 70 years, the presidents of both parties believed that American security and prosperity were directly tied to the success of freedom in the world. They knew that the success depended in large part on U.S. leadership. The mission came naturally because it expressed the DNA of American idealism. We know deep down that repression is not the wave of the future. We know that the desire for freedom is not confined to or owned by any culture.
When a Mason learns the seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, i.e. before he is allowed to progress to higher Masonic degrees, he must prove his ability to properly apply that energy. This is a quote from Manly P. Hall. Yes, that is what Manly P. Hall has to say about Freemasonry, of which Bill Clinton is a member.
Hello and welcome everybody to a new book reading with Jörg Glissman and I on Codeword Barbelon 666 Danger in the Vatican. Now, Jörg, you just read a very intriguing quote here.
A quote that another time just affirms that there is a big difference between the initiated and the not initiated, between the enlightened and the not enlightened, between the esoteric and the exoteric teaching of secret societies.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely. Manly P. Hall wrote this monumental work, the Secret of All Ages, I think it's called. The Secret of Abrim, The Lost Keys to Freemasonry. This quote is taken from, it says here, that is also known as The Secret of Hiram Abiff. This other book that he wrote, what I just said, what is the title? Do you have that at hand?
I'm sorry. Let's see. Lost Keys of Freemasonry. Which title for what? I'm sorry.
Secret Teaching of All Ages. The Secret Teaching of All Ages. I got it here. Yeah.
Good. Good. Yeah, I couldn't think of it. I'm sorry. I'm still sipping my coffee here. Yeah,
that is a book of 600 pages, and as we said yesterday, it is quite dry and everything. But this little quote really sums it up when you have to do with quote-unquote secret societies.
Yes.
When Masons learn the seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply that energy. So that means that you have to deal with the energy of Lucifer. That means that you have to deal with not only Masonic, but with satanic energy. This is what Manly P. Hall, who has really a knowledge of Freemasonry, says about Freemasonry, and of that William Jefferson Clinton, or Bill Clinton, was a member, or is a member.
Yeah.
And that's not all. The book continues. I'm going to continue right away, because yesterday we should have maybe finished this page, but then again it would have been much longer than an hour.
Didn't we do that the day before too?
Yeah, sometimes that happens.
Yeah, no problem, Jörg.
So the point is, we're finishing this page 183 where I'm reading this from, then we come to the next chapter. But that's all right. We have an hour today and we will learn something about that. So P.D. Stewart continues, and that's not all. There is also proof which suggests that Bill Clinton was a deep cover CIA agent in the late 1960s. And don't forget, CIA stands for Catholics in Action. While at Oxford University, and that is his handler, and that his handler was none other than the CIA's London bureau chief, Court Meyer. But more on that in chapter 37. So that's quite a little way to go.
Yeah, it is.
Before we move on, I promised in the footnote on page 181 to say more about President Barack Obama. Here it is, for what it's worth. Obama's gonna change it. Obama's gonna lead him. We're gonna change it and rearrange it, unquote. Yeah, you know what I always found so funny about the Americans with the election of Obama in the time?
Yeah,
was
2000.
Obama had this slogan of change.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yes, we can, and change. And all the people screaming, change, change, change. But never, ever was there anybody who told them what the change would imply.
Yeah.
What would be changed, you know? The people are so gullible in these days. Mm-hmm. They pick up a slogan without even questioning, what's going to change then? Mm-hmm. For example, now I'm free. He says change, maybe then I'm not free anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my point being, always question everything. Mm-hmm. Obama's going to change it. Obama's going to lead him. We're going to change it and rearrange it. The above song is from a grassroots music video produced by Sing for Change, showing children singing praises to Obama. Now, most people know that Barack Obama worked extensively in community organizing in the 1980s. But what is not so well known is that this community organizing was done when Obama was hired by a lay Catholic minister, Jerry Kellman, as lead organizer for a Chicago organization called the Developing Communities Project, funded by Chicago's Southside Catholic churches. What is also significant is that Obama's Chicago mentor, Gregory Galuzzo, was a Jesuit priest. And now, Obama's chief speechwriter, John Favreau, is a Jesuit-trained ethics professor. Obama's senior military and foreign policy advisor, Major General J. Scott Gratian, is Jesuit-trained, and Obama's deputy communications director, Dan Pfeiffer, is Jesuit-trained. Obama chose Jesuit-controlled Joe Biden as his vice president. Do you think that all of Mr. Obama's Jesuit connections and selections are mere coincidences? And why do you think the other side, meaning Republicans, ran a corpse and a hockey mum against him? To ensure his victory. Yes, change has come to America. Reader, what is yet to come will, at first, leave you nonplussed. Every unnerved, alarmed, puzzled, mystified, bewildered, and baffled, but even unnerved, alarmed, puzzled, mystified, bewildered, and baffled, but I promise it will all be made clear at the end. And therefore you have, of course, to stick to the end of the book, which we now have reached on page 184, not even half of it. But you see, it is quite interesting to see through the deceptions, to, on the one hand, give the proofs of the conspiracy, and then give you an explanation of this Phi Beta Kappa literary societies, and sororities, or whatever name they're going to give to it. These Greek letter societies, all based on, by the Bible, condemned philosophy of men. Mm. And that is very important to see that. And even then, this little quote from Manly P. Hall. A Mason learns the seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward or upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply that energy. Now, what do you think that means when you take that sentence a little bit down? To me, that is nothing else but as the same thing that when you are a member of the Jesuit order and you want to go into a position of command, you have to prove before that you can kill.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is the same here with this Masonic meaning when we break down this little quote from Manly P. All here. Okay, Brett.
Right. To
some
be able to
remarks?
kill and justify it, justify it without any equivocation or mental reservation, just done. Yeah, I don't know, man. These people are really under something, some kind of spell. I don't know. It's very demonic. That's all I know. Man. Yeah. The scum rises to the top again and again and again. So we're on page 184 now. Yeah.
And there it starts chapter 18 that is called the Jesuit Secret Service, the Confessional or the All-Seeing Eye of Rome. Now, before I even get into this, I want to make a little comment on the title of this chapter. There's a book out that is written from this wonderful ex-Roman Catholic priest, Charles Chiniquy, that is called The Woman, the Priest, and the Confessional.
Oh, yes.
And if you ever want to understand a little bit about the confessional, get that book. And here comes my question to all of you. If anybody of you has the ability of reading and understanding Latin, then turn to the letter pages of this book, where there are in Latin written all the questions a Catholic priest asks women and children in the confessional. And these questions are so horrible in nature that Charles Chiniquy didn't print them in English. And I didn't find a translation program on the internet that gives me the correct translation of that. But I can tell you, even from that incorrect translation that I got, it sent shivers down my spine. My hairs were standing on my neck and on my arms, I can tell you. Those are such abominable questions, but it would for once really be interesting to get a complete translation of that Latin phrases that are printed in the back of that book. Mm-hmm. You have to understand the confessional is not only a sacrament in the Roman Catholic Church in which you have to partake to get salvation, because Roman Catholicism is a works-based religion. The point is that through this confessional, not only do you share your innermost secrets with a stranger, what the priest actually is, but also this confessional was used by the Roman Catholic Church already in these days to break up families. Because the woman in the confessional would confess to her confessor things she wouldn't even discuss with her own husband.
Wow. Yeah.
So that means that in the marriage between a man and a woman, all of a sudden there's a third person. And we are not speaking about God, who actually should be the only third quote-unquote person being involved in a marriage between man and woman, but we are speaking about a Roman Catholic priest. And the information that he got out of that woman, and that he got out of that man, and that he got out of the children, the Roman Catholic Church was always using to their own advantage, because the end justifies the means. They broke up families already at that time. So many women were sexually dependent on the priest. They didn't want to have sex with their husband anymore because they got it with that priest. You know, it is a very dependable relationship the woman had with the priest. And there are probably also enough cases where that is between the priest and the man because they are sodomites. And there are many instances where that is between the priest and the child. And you will understand that when you read the questions on the end of the book from Charles Chiniquy, The Priest, the Woman, and the Confessional. Tom Friess read that book, if I'm not mistaken, in 2009 on First Amendment Radio. So when you have access to the archives of First Amendment Radio, you can listen to that reading there. But I have planned anyway to read that book on my channel in the future. But I would very much like to have, if possible, the correct translation of the Latin questions the priest asks his confessional at the end of the book. So if anybody who listens to this video, who watches this video, understands what I'm asking and can provide the information, I would be very, very grateful. Even though that it is probably very, very hard to read and to bear what is written there. Do you have anything to say before we start with this chapter, Brad?
Oh, no, go ahead, please, Jörg.
Okay. You know, I just don't want to run over you, you know?
No. It's no problem at all. Yeah, no, you're not.
So we are starting with a quote from Abbot M. Leone, an ex-Jesuit. And I think in the meantime, everybody knows what to think of the phrase, quote unquote, ex-Jesuit. Make up your own mind. I'm not commenting on any little thing here. The quote reads as follows. There are in the central house at Rome huge registers wherein are inscribed the names of all the important persons, friends, or enemies. Unquote. And Bernard Shaw in The Devil's Disciple in Act 3, 12th picture that probably is, because that's a piece of a theater piece, yeah, you know, a play.
Yes.
Quote, a thing that nobody believes cannot be proved too often. Did you get that? A thing that nobody believes cannot be proved too often. Like the truth. Interesting, huh?
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah. Well, I just wanted a quick comment. Yeah, ex-Jesuit, that it's really something to make a statement like that, Jörg, because you know how long it takes to become a Jesuit. I mean, to be a full-fledged Jesuit. Wasn't it like 20 years or something? Or more?
Well, beg your pardon, I didn't quite listen.
Oh, to become a member of the Society of Jesus, a full-fledged member, it takes many years, and you have to go through rigorous training.
At least at about 20 years, yeah, sometimes even more. For example, it is documented that John Carroll, the first American Catholic bishop of Baltimore, had a training of 26 years in St. Omer, most and for all.
Wow, 26 years.
And Charles Carroll and Daniel Carroll had a training which was much less, but they are no Jesuit priests.
No.
They are on another level. But John Carroll, for example, I think he was a professed Jesuit, means of the fourth vow after 26 years. Yeah, you know, we got through these different stages in the book already. We are speaking about the novices, then the Vegeters, then the scholastics, and then the professed at the end.
Yeah, that's right.
And it always depends on how well, quote unquote, well you are doing in your position that you are having right now, if there will be offered a further possibility to get up in the hierarchy, you know?
That's right.
A thing that nobody believes cannot be proved too often. I think this whole book deals with just that fact.
Oh, no doubt.
So let's continue here on page 184 for the people who are reading along in their own copy of the book, which I strongly advise you to do. If you don't have this few bucks to buy this book, then you should really think about what you spend your money on. On the occasion of May 13th, 1935, the French Foreign Minister Pierre Laval intimated to Soviet leader Joseph Stalin that the Pope might not approve of his actions. To this, Stalin replied mockingly, "The Pope? How many divisions has he got?" The answer is, of course, legions. a vast regiment, all marshaled and in continual attendance before their chief, a host as large in number as it is varied in its gifts. The Pope's army and divisions are the dioceses and vicariates, meaning the districts under the jurisdiction of the vicars, his priests, his nuns, and a vast sodality of lay orders going under the designation Catholic action, all under the direction of the Jesuit general. Before he even continues here, I say even more. The Pope has all the armies of the world, because when you control the kings of the worlds, you control automatically their military. So the Pope doesn't need his Swiss Guard. He doesn't need what we just read about here, of course, the vicariates and other stuff. If we are speaking about what army does the Pope have, the Pope has all the divisions. He has all the divisions of the world. Yeah, please, Brett.
Yes, Jörg, you know, as you and I both know by listening to Tom Fress's reading of the Global Vatican in 2015, Francis Rooney goes into a long discussion about quote unquote soft power, the power of influence. And I think it's rather interesting how Tom took that apart and explained it. And wow, yeah, the influence of the papacy is something else.
Soft power is actually what we are speaking here about, because that is what is taken care of in the confessional. That is part of the soft power, you know?
Yes, it is, isn't it? Does Francis Rooney go into that? I can't remember him doing that.
No.
He would never do that.
Francis Rooney doesn't, but Tom does.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, Francis Rooney is in it. He's really deep in it, man.
And anyway, we are at the moment anyway giving a little bit comment here. Before we even go and read further, the confessional, what I just told you, so that the priest, and by that the Roman Catholic Church, has all the information on all the individuals of all the families. That is something that has, of course, changed in the last years, because the churches are not that very well visited anymore, and the confessional is not that much used anymore. But because the church controls the state, the church has given the state the order to fulfill this work of the confessional by the state. And how does the state do that? By implementing intelligence agencies as the NSA, for example, also all other intelligence agencies, by controlling all social networks like Facebook, Twitter, and what else you all got. That's why they have a total control on the complete internet, which is normal because the internet came from the DoD, Department of Defense. It is their invention. We use it, and when we use it, we have to agree to their terms. It's very easy when you think about it. And because all these intelligence agencies gather all information they can get via social media, using of your cell phone, using of your tablet, using of your laptop, using of your PC, using of everything that you are using that is technically in any way, these intelligence agencies gather all these information via companies as Google, as YouTube, as all that stuff. And I can assure you one thing, they know you better than you know yourself. And that is the modern confessional. You know, Facebook is the biggest joke on earth. The people all of a sudden share all their secrets out in the open. The CIA must have laughed when that Facebook stuff took off. And they saw that all of a sudden people share even their most intimate secrets with so-called friends on a platform that was available to the intelligence agencies. And therefore, you don't have the importance of the confessional today anymore, but you understand, because the confessional is not in working as it was 150, 200 years ago anymore today, but the Roman Catholic Church still needs and wants and gets all of that information. And this is the way they get it now. So maybe here and there's somebody who says now, oh, okay, I don't need that Facebook. Throw it out. I, for myself, I once started a Facebook account years ago, never did anything with it. Never did anything with it, and I deleted it, I think, a year ago completely. So nothing is more to be found of me in there, and I never used it anyway. So, but I don't have an account there anymore, and any other social media I don't do. And my telephone that I have, that is just a simple Nokia mobile telephone for $25. Doesn't have internet access, doesn't have anything of these stuff. Okay, they of course control that also in the way that they can, but I switch it off at night. I take out the battery if possible, if I think about it, if I think it's necessary. But I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. I mean, I'm not the one who shares now everything on Facebook, but I don't care what they know of me or don't, because I know that I speak the truth. I speak biblically, and they are going to find me anyway when the shit hits the fan.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I don't care. And
Right.
I don't care for that. Let them come,
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise I wouldn't be bothering doing this book reading with Brett here on Skype, which is a Jesuit-controlled company, on the internet, which is Jesuit-controlled. I wouldn't do that. I'd say, oh, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of the consequences. No, I'm not. Let them come. Give it to me. Come here. Here I stand. I have the truth. What do you have? Maybe weapons.
That's right. Yeah,
But you
what do we
can't-
have to be afraid of these men for?
Nothing.
They're dumb.
Absolutely nothing.
They have to go to their superiors to do anything at all, when they're in this hierarchy. It's BS, man. They don't have any authority at all on which to stand. If they don't know their scriptures, they're just walking dead. Another Smumby.
Zombie, yeah.
Yeah.
Smartphone zombie. That was a good one.
Yeah, it is. I love that. We got
By the
plenty
way,
of
I
those.
find it a little bit disappointing that P.D. Stewart doesn't go into the fact that Joseph Stalin, even though he mockingly replied, "The Pope, how many divisions or soldiers has he got?" that P.D. Stewart doesn't go into the point that Stalin was at least for 2 years trained in Georgia, and I mean Georgia in Russia, Tiflis, that city, and he was a Jesuit priest.
Oh, man.
And P.D. Stewart doesn't go into that, and I think that's a shame. That is information that should be shared at a moment like this in the book.
Sure.
Anyway, we read the first 2 paragraphs,
Mm-hmm.
and now let's continue on the third. The Pope's army also has many divisions, every one of which is manned by a bishop or vicar, who rally the forces and along with a sufficient number of priests to watch and advise the quote-unquote faithful. The solidarities are the vanguard, but the Jesuits are in charge. In the words of the papal encyclical Ad Catholici Sacerdotii, it is, quote, as an army set in array, unquote, each assigned, quote, his place and station, unquote, and obedient unto death. Moreover, according to R.L. Delisa, quote, every bishop who is sent in partibus infidelium, non-Romish countries that is an inquisitor, charged to discover, through his missionaries, whatever is done or said in reference to Rome, with the obligation to report secretly to the general in Rome, unquote. Said Dr. James Edkin Wiley, quote, he, meaning the general of the Society of Jesus, sees by 1,000 eyes, he hears by 1,000 ears, unquote. It becomes us, therefore, to know the means by which this superhuman intelligence is acquired, as Wiley so eloquently puts it.
Mm-hmm.
The all-seeing eye. And you think of the footnotes, right, Brad?
Yeah. Right.
Thanks.
You bet.
The all-seeing eye is one of the universal symbols of Freemasonry and of the Jesuits. It owes its origin to the Eye of Osiris, or Eye of Hathor, also regarded as a symbol of the Eye of Lucifer in occult circles. Rabbi Marvin Antelman, in his book To Eliminate the Opiate, states, quote, the all-seeing eye, having been associated in pagan rites, also is a symbol of enlightenment. Because of its association with sun worship, the sun illuminates, unquote. This intensely occult symbol is depicted on some very interesting places, such as Egyptian pyramids, the crests and logos of major corporations, Masonic lodges, Mormon temples, and in satanic books. It can also be found, interestingly enough, in many Catholic churches, not least St. Peter's Basilica and other important Catholic cathedrals. Another very interesting place where it can be found is on the back of your American dollar bill. But there's far more to the all-seeing eye than mere occult symbolism. It is a figura of the intelligence's gathering facilities of the most powerful organization on earth, the Jesuit headquarters at Rome. Jesuit Superior General Michelangelo Tamburini, during a private meeting in 1720 with the Duke of Bissac, and we have already read that quote earlier in this book, he vaunted, quote, "See, my grace, from this room I govern not only Paris, but China. Not only China, but the whole world, without anyone knowing how it is managed," unquote. So you see, these men rule not just their order, but much more besides from their court at Rome. It behooves us, therefore, to know exactly how it is that the general is able to achieve this feature, and by what means he governs the whole world without anyone knowing how it is done. It was, listen closely, Sun Tzu who wrote, quote, "The general sees all, hears all, does all, and yet, in appearance, is not involved with anything," unquote. This is the hallmark of the Jesuit general. And if you want to learn more about Sun Tzu, turn again to one of my most favorite books of all time, Rulers of Evil. That book of Sun Tzu, The Art of War, was published by Amiot, a French Jesuit, in 1772, just 1 year before the Jesuit order was worldwide abolished by the Pope and his bull Dominic Ac Redemptor. Do you think that is a quote-unquote coincidence? That a year before the abolishment of the order by Lorenzo Ricci, this book pops up, The Art of War? And do you really believe Sun Tzu was a Chinese emperor, a Chinese general working for the Chinese emperor? The Jesuits very much love to speak in allegories.
Oh, yes.
And that's what they do, in parables, in allegories, you know?
Mm.
There never was a Sun Tzu Chinese general under any Chinese emperor. It is all Jesuit tactics, laid wide in the open under another name, so you'll never make the association.
Man,
From
talk
this
about
chamber in Rome,
devilish, huh?
yeah,
Wow.
from this chamber in Rome, writes Riley, the eye of the general surveys the world to its farthest bounds. There is nothing done in it which he does not see. There is nothing spoken in which he does not hear. To the general of the Jesuits, the world lies naked and open. He sees by 1,000 eyes, he hears by 1,000 ears, and when he has a behest to execute, he can select the fittest agent from an innumerable host, all of whom are ready to do his bidding. Unquote. The historian Reno Fulop Miller, in his book The Power and Secret of the Jesuits, confirms that the Jesuit order, quote, is serviced by a most active system of written reports that unites all the various colonies of the Brotherhood of the Jesuits with their headquarters in Rome, unquote. Each Jesuit is required to report to his local superior, and in turn each superior gives a weekly detailed report to the provincial, who in turn gives a monthly summary report to the Jesuit general in Rome. Superiors are further required to report serious information to the general immediately. Auricular confession is the next part of this chapter. Auricular confession, it is dangerous to speak, and it is dangerous to be silent. Confession, says Chrysostom, one of the quote-unquote church fathers of the very first centuries, by the way, Saint Chrysostom, confession opens the gate of heaven. No, it opens the gate of hell. In fact, I say to you that auricular confession is, quote, libidinous and mischievous, contrivance that opens the sluice gate of hell. Just as I said, it opens. I don't even need to read this book. I know it all in advance. Although this is a delicate subject, permit me, dear reader, to speak not as a politician, but as an impartial reporter of the facts. Says John Nicoda, quote, of all the machinations of evil, Satan never invented a scheme more devilish and effective than auricular confession, unquote. Do you find that harsh? Well, Professor Wilford Melton, who studied the confessional, asserts that he, quote, was satisfied that he had found the key to the mystery of legitimacy among the priest-ridden flocks of the Church of Rome.
It begins. Your comment. That's illegitimacy. Yes, illegitimacy. Yeah.
What did I say? Legitimacy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just a simple mistake.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I just want to make sure you got it.
Yeah, that's all right. Sorry, I just read over it a little bit wrong. So he asserts that, quote, was satisfied that he had found the key to the mystery of illegitimacy among the priest-ridden flocks of the Church of Rome. It begins, said he, in the vow of celibacy and culminates in the confessional, unquote. And Saint Liguori, Liguori is not a saint, but yeah, he's a saint in the Roman Catholic Church. So, quote-unquote, Saint Liguori, one of the 33 beloved Jesuit doctors of Rome, and known as the champion of Catholic orthodoxy, proves this to be true. Quote, if she, a woman, confess that she had coveted him, the priest hearing her confession, he should say to her, we will talk of this after confession is over. How preposterous this Saint Liguori and all his rapacious adherents. Confession, my pure-minded reader, is a black hole from which no light escapes. I say to my Catholic friends that notwithstanding your penitent honesty or best intentions, the confessional serves just two and only two purposes: to satisfy the prurient interests of the Catholic priests, and more importantly, as an information, quote-unquote, clearinghouse for Rome. Do you find this preposterous? Do you find these blasphemous or irreverent? Then ponder these words from Charles Chiniquy, who was a Roman Catholic priest for 50 years. Quote, the confessional box is, for the greatest part of the confessors and female penitents, a real pit of perdition, into which they fall and perish. Unquote. Chiniquy continues, quote, were I attempting to prove by public facts what I know of the horrible depravity caused by the confessional box among the priests of France, Canada, Spain, Italy, England, I should have to write many big volumes in folio. And of course, this quote is taken from The Priest, the Woman, and the Confessional, as I said in the very beginning of this chapter. A book that is absolutely interesting for your understanding. Yeah? Of the moral depravity that flows from the confessional, Professor Melton observed that there are numerous scandals of this kind in Italy, that is, such as would have been scandals in non-Catholic countries, quote, but are there mentioned simply as a matter of course way, unquote. In fact, the abuses of the confessional are such that, quote, in 1560, the Senate of Venice forbade the Jesuits to confess women because they made use of confession for purposes of immorality. Many boys and girls are first made to eat of the tree of the knowledge of evil in the confessional, unquote. I hope that everybody understands what I just read here. These are very, very profound words in this quote. In 1560, the Senate of Venice forbade the Jesuits to confess women because they made use of confession for purposes of immorality, meaning fornication, adultery. Yeah? Many boys and girls are first made to eat from the tree of the knowledge of evil in the confessional. What does that mean? We are speaking about pedophilia here, boys and girls, men and women, brothers and sisters, dear brethren. Here we are speaking about the pedophilia that is all rampant in the Roman Catholic Church because of their idolatrous, superstitious religion. Many boys and girls are first made to eat from the tree of knowledge of evil in the confessional. And you will understand this when you translate the sentences on the back of the book of Charles Chiniquy. I can assure you that. Why are you so surprised at this? Did not the Jesuit Saint Liguori say that, quote, the most virtuous priests are constrained to fall at least once a month, unquote? Right. That's what Liguori said. That the priest is a pure and godly person, but he is allowed at least once a month to fall into his fleshly lusts. And how is he going to consume these fleshly lusts? How is he going to give into these fleshly lusts? Adultery, fornication, pedophilia. We doubt whether fathers of families will be eager to have such virtuous priests as confessors for their little virgins. This open sepulchre called confession is never satisfied. From its box, moral decay issues, consuming everything it touches. Are you offended by this? Then read the Confessions of Anthony Gavin, a former priest, about his use of the confessional to inveigle and seduce female parishioners. Here comes a quote that is taken from a book published in 1812 and 1832 by Liberty House, first published even in 1724 in Dublin. Gavin was a priest in the city of Saragossa in Spain, and Spain is the most Roman Catholic country in the whole world, even more Catholic than Italy, all through the ages. Listen to the quotes. My thoughts have been impure ever since I began to hear confessions. I polluted his holy days, God's holy days, by my grievous sins. And I have been the cause of many innocent deaths. I have procured, by remedies, 60 abortions, making the fathers of the children their murderers. Besides many other intended, though not executed, by some unexpected accidents. As to the sixth commandment, I cannot confess by particulars. We were only 60 parish priests in it. Everybody, meaning the 60 priests, had a list of the handsomest woman in his parish. And when one had a fancy to see any woman remarkable in her beauty in another parish, the priest of her parish sent her to his own house, and having prepared the way, the other had nothing to do but to meet her there and fulfill his desires. Unquote. Yet, the Church of Rome insists that confession is in harmony with the command of Christ and is necessary to salvation. As I said, it is one of the sacraments of the Roman Catholic Church, and you need a sacrament, you need all the sacraments in the Roman Catholic Church to get saved. If anyone denies that sacramental confession was instituted by divine law or is necessary to salvation, or says that the manner of confessing secretly to a priest alone, which the Catholic Church has always observed from the beginning and still observes, is at variance with the institution and command of Christ and is a human contrivance, let him be anathema. Unquote. Anathema stands for let him be accursed. Let him be cursed. Let him be put under the church ban, like excommunicated. That's what it means. And when you are a Roman Catholic and you are being excommunicated, then you cannot go to heaven. It's exactly the same thing as Jesus was speaking with the scribes and the Pharisees who were closing up heaven for the people in their parish. Read Matthew chapter 23. Very, very interesting. And what does the Bible say about confession? Does the Bible say that we have to confess our sins to each other? No. The Bible says, confess your mistakes, your faults to each other, not your sins. When we Bible-believing Christians have to confess our sins, we go into our chamber where we are alone, we go into our closet, we close the door, and then we are going to speak through Jesus Christ to our Father who is in heaven. And we pray. And we beg forgiveness for our sins in a direct relationship, in a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I do not confess my sins to my quote-unquote brothers. My faults, my mistakes, yeah, but not my sins. There's a big difference. The Pope condemns to hell all those who reject the confessional. Why? Because it is the hiding of his power. While he reveals the true nature of this device called confession, quote, let all who value the sweetness of a pure imagination and the joy of a conscience undefiled shun the confessional as they would the chamber in which the plague is shut up, or the path in which lurks the deadly scorpion, unquote. It initiates the priesthood into licentiousness, dissolution, immorality, shamelessness, and in vice. And that's a fact. But, as was said before, auricular confession does not only open the sluice gate of hell, it is an information gathering device of the Pope. Coming back to what I said in the beginning of this broadcast, remember? Proof of this vast international information gathering operation is revealed in the career of Father Athanasius Kircher, who was ordained a Jesuit priest in 1628 and of whom we shall learn more later. Paul A. Schlons of the Department of Modern and Classical Languages at the University of St. Thomas, a Catholic university because St. Thomas refers to St. Thomas Aquinas, the angelic doctor of the Roman Catholic Church who lived in the 13th century, writes that this Jesuit Athanasius Kircher moved to Rome in 1634 to, quote, take up the soul task of assembling and organizing information sent by Jesuit missionaries from all parts of the world. Unquote. This was the purpose of the confession from its very inception. Read here the mischievous advice given by Saint Loyola to the priests hearing auricular confession. Quote, "You must appear to notice little at the first, and show yourself a good companion. When you become acquainted with the bosom sins and pleasant vices of folk in high position, you can lead them to the path of virtue at your pleasure. Make no show of compromise with evil in the gross, but refine away the evil by distinctions, reservations, hypothetical conditions until it disappears. Do not leave folk to their own blunt and sense of right and wrong, but let them admire the finer edge of your scalpel, while you shred up evil into morsels they can hardly see. A ready way may thus be opened. The advantages are manifested. Your penitent, that is the person who is confessing, your penitent will abound in gratitude and open out his heart to you. You will fulfill your function as confessor and counselor ad majorem Dei gloriam, for the greater glory of God." Unquote. Now I have to retreat here to a book that Alexander Hislop wrote that is called The Two Babylons. And yeah, my computer of course doesn't work anymore. That's okay, I know this. I have to open this up absolutely here. The Two Babylons.
Oh, yes, The Two Babylons. Excellent.
Yeah. Where is that book here? Oh, come on. Hislop. I need that book right now.
Oh, yes.
The Two Babylons in English. Okay. And then I need to do a little word search. Chaise. And when I find it, you will understand why I'm looking for this. It reads here on page 127 of the book, The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop. Just a second, I'm going to get this here. It's a little bit small. Let's see if I can put it 100%. Yeah, that's easier to read. Where does the sentence start? The page before here. "Now the priests of Rome have in every respect occupied after the priests of Anubis, the god of the scales. In the confessional," this is from Alexander Hislop's book, "in the confessional, when they have an object to gain, they make the sins and transgressions good weight. And then, when they have a man of influence or power or wealth to deal with, they will not give him the slightest hope till round sums of money or the founding of an abbey or some other object of which they have set their heart be cast into the other scale. In the famous letter of Père Lachaise, the confessor of the French king Louis XIV, the Sun King, who you all know from the end of the 17th century, in the famous letter of Père Lachaise, the confessor of Louis XIV of France, giving an account of the method which he adopted to gain the consent of that licentious monarch to the revocation of the Edict of Nantes, by which such cruelties were inflicted on his innocent Huguenot subjects, we see how the fear of the scales of Saint Michael operated in bringing about the desired result. Now, listen closely. I gotta make this a little bit bigger again because it's really hard to read. So I'll make it a little bit bigger. I'm sorry for that. I didn't plan that, but really, this is something you have to hear. Many a time since, says the accomplished Jesuit, referring to an atrocious sin of which the king had been guilty, Many a time since, when I have had him at confession, I have shook hell about his ears, and made him sigh, fear, and tremble before I would give him absolution. By this I saw that he had still an inclination to me, and was willing to be under my government. So I set the baseness of the action before him by telling the whole story, and how wicked it was, and that it could not be forgiven till he had done some good action to balance that and expiate the crime. Whereupon he at last asked me what he must do. I told him that he must root out all heretics from his kingdom. This was the good action, to be cast into the scale of Saint Michael the Archangel, to balance his crime. The king, wicked as he was, sore against his will, consented. The good action was cast in, the heretics were extirpated, and the king was absolved. But yet the absolution was not such but that, when he went the way of all the earth, there was still much to be cast before the scales, before the scales could be fairly adjusted. Thus, paganism and popery alike make merchandise of the souls of men, as we read in Revelation 18, verse 13. Thus, the one with the scales of Anubis, the one with the scales of Saint Michael, exactly answers to the divine description of Ephraim in his apostasy. Quote, Ephraim is the merchant, the balances of deceit are in his hand, as we read in Hosea chapter 12, verse 7. The Anubis of the Egyptians was precisely the same as the Mercury of the Greeks, the god of thieves. Saint Michael, in the hands of Rome, answers exactly to the same character. By means of him and his scales, and their doctrine of human merits, they have made what they call the house of God to be nothing else than a den of thieves. To rob men of their money is bad, but infinitely worse to cheat them also of their souls. The point that I wanted to make with reading this to you is that Père Lachaise, the Jesuit confessor of King Louis XIV from France, made use of the oracle confession to make sure that they could revoke the Edict of Nantes, which gave the Huguenots, the French Protestants, religious liberty in that way that they could serve their God as they wanted, as the Bible predicts, as the Bible commands. Mm-hmm. The very most important point that is not read right here, you have to look that up somewhere else, is where it is stated. How did de la Chaise do that? We already have a little information. Now, what was the crime that the king committed that he wanted to get absolution of? He fornicated with a blood relative, a close blood relative, a female blood relative, and he wanted absolution from that sin. And he asked Lachaise several times to give him absolution, and he didn't do it. He said, no, I can't give you absolution on this sin. And then later on, Lachaise said, okay, I can do it if you extirpate the Huguenots. Then I can give you absolution of this sin. And he convinced the king, and this is the very bad thing that is not mentioned here, but on another place, I think in the same book. The point how he convinced the king was to say, listen, king, these Protestants are soulless anyway. They will not be saved by the Roman Catholic Church, and the Roman Catholic Church is the only true church of Jesus Christ, outside of which there is no salvation. So these Huguenots are dead already. You are doing a God service when you kill them. And these were the arguments that Père Lachaise used to convince Louis XIV to revoke the Edict of Nantes, which had been standing for almost 100 years and giving security to the French Huguenots. And I think with that, Brett, we should stop our broadcast for today. I hope that you found that information, that extra information from the book, The Two Babylons from Alexander Hislop, helpful. And we can continue next time. Or do you have some minutes still, Brett, that we can continue this last paragraph?
Please do. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So after that quote that I just read to you over the auricular confession from Loyola, we'll continue with this one paragraph here until we come to the next part of this chapter, the secret Jesuit service, and there we will continue next time. But first, let's continue after the quote of Loyola, where it says, "Reader, recall the words of the Illuminati founder, the Jesuit Adam Weishaupt, in his letter of February 6, 1778, to Cato, quote, 'The instructions shall be conducted that each shall disclose what he thinks he conceals in his own breast. His ruling propensities and passions, this will answer all the purposes of auricular confession. And in particular, every person shall be made a spy on another and on all around him.' In Weishaupt's words, quote, 'all the purposes of auricular confession,' unquote, are designed to get the individual to reveal or disclose what he thinks and conceals in his own breast. This is almost exactly what Loyola said. The priests of every parish and in every country are the kingpins in this web of spying, reporting regularly to their bishops every item of interest shared in the confessional. In turn, the bishop to his archbishop, the archbishop to the cardinal, and the cardinal to the pope. Said Burke McCarthy, quote, 'The confessional box is the Roman clearinghouse, whereby the pope keeps his finger on the pulse of the world,' unquote. I don't think there are words more eloquent to put it into one little sentence what the auricular confession in the confession box is all about. But this sentence from Burke McCarthy, who, by the way, wrote this wonderful book, The Suppressed Truth About the Assassination of Abraham Lincoln, where this quote is taken from. The confessional box is the Roman clearinghouse whereby the Pope keeps his finger on the pulse of the world. This is very important to understand. Very important to understand. Pierre Lenné relates in his memoirs that the Catholic priests are trained in espionage and then, quote, let loose in the confessionals, unquote. More of this great book, Codeword Barbelon, 666 Danger in the Vatican, the Sons of Loyola and their plans for world domination, next time when we come together. And I thank you for watching and listening and reading along and commenting. And I hope that you enjoyed that little excursion into the two Babylons from Alexander Hislop. I thought that was appropriate at that moment. I will leave the closing remarks, of course, as always, for Brett Norman. And I thank Brett for the invitation. I thank you for everything that I just did. And until next time, Joggler66 from Hour of the Truth signing off says, God bless you and bye-bye.
Thank you, Jörg. That was wonderful to have this reading again today. It's quite a large undertaking to digest the entire view of the Roman Catholic faith and what it is in contrast to Protestantism. And yeah, it takes a while to digest this. It's not like you can just pass through it quickly, and certainly The Two Babylons is a book that I wish to get reading too, and in the future. And I really appreciate the quote there that you pulled out from there, because I thought that fit perfectly with this reading. And certainly there's a lot more to learn. So that ends our journey for today into Codeword Barbelon, and we hope to see you next time. God bless everybody, and bye-bye for now.
A lot of our history comes from Rome. We have to recognize that. It was old Gibbon who said that when the wars are fought, the victors tell the story. I'm not giving his words exactly, but that's the gist of what he says. He says, in other words, it is the victors who tell the story. So if you're a defeated Christian small group, then your story is told from the standpoint of those who conquered you. And Pelikan, the modern American scholar, says, and there is no other way, many times, to tell the story.
Now, as you may know, my running mate, Tim, is Catholic and went to Jesuit schools. And one of the things he and I have talked about is this idea from the Jesuits of the Magus, the more, the better.
That day, His Holiness will be the first Pope in our history to address a joint session of Congress.
And for the first time in world history, the use of corruption and oligarchs as a sinister tool in the conduct of foreign policy.
We're humbled that the Holy Father has accepted our invitation and certainly look forward to receiving his message on behalf of the American people.
Countries emerging from chaos in the midst of war, challenges to the international order on the high seas and in the skies.
The fall of Ramadi has galvanized the Iraqi government. So with the additional steps I ordered last month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar province.
And where major powers come together to deal with the challenges of our time that require us all to act in concert. And there are many challenges, including violent extremism, for the first time in world history, the use of corruption and oligarchs as a sinister tool in the conduct of foreign policy.
That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.